why you chose to study in the online program, and what you're doing now. And maybe we'll start with Sarah because it's harder to point to her in the group setting.
I can totally start. My name is Sarah Leister. I live in Des Moines, Iowa, which is why I am here virtually. Before I did Flatiron School, I worked at a nonprofit, and I wrote and managed all of their grants. In November of 2015, I think, was when I started Flatiron School. And then since then, like last September, I started in my job as a developer, and I work at Pillar Technology, which is a software consultant firm.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Zach, you want to go?
Great. Hi, everybody. My name's Zach. I'm an analyst at BlackRock. Before the online program here at the Flatiron School, I was running national sales for a company based here in New York called Ivy.com. And then actually, immediately before I started the program, I was in graduate school. And so I thought that I could do the program at the same time as being in grad school, and then got hooked, so I dropped out.
You dropped out of grad school?
Yeah, I dropped out of grad school.
I didn't know that. What were you in grad school for?
So I was focused on, I was doing an MA MBA over at NYU. I was focused on economic development in the Middle East, particularly in places where there was very little government control. So I was interested in quantitative analysis, but it ended up being that I was more interested in coding than I was in Excel.
Wow.
So that was it.
So we beat out an MA at NYU, an MBA at NYU. Why?
Yeah.
And is that why you were doing the program online? Because you're in New York.
Yeah, I mean, well, initially I thought, so grad school was interesting. I wasn't really enjoying the program. And I thought, you know, I had some time on the side. This was a subscription program. If I loved it, then I could keep going. If I hated it, then I could always drop it. But ultimately, it was a great skill to know. So I figured, let's just give it a shot, may as well. So I took the dive, and then I guess I stayed in the swimming pool and just went up the way. So.
All right. Don?
Hi, I'm Don Fabrio. I live in Queens, and I've gone through a couple of iterations of my career. Previous to Flatiron, I was managing a law firm. Not a lawyer, I was an operations manager, so not the legal stuff. But I didn't realize they were going to throw things at me. But yeah, so I just kind of was not, you know, wasn't the first thing I wanted to be doing was working for a law firm. So, you know, I was always in front of my computer, like just that's what I would do. And my wife eventually was kind of like, you know, maybe you should try one of these coding boot camps. You're going to be in front of the computer anyway. You should probably, you know, do something with that. And so I just started researching in-person boot camps. And I think I kind of just stumbled upon the Flatiron School online program while, you know, trying to research and learn on my own. And when I found out that I could do the whole thing online, you know, and then the job guarantee, I mean, I don't know, I was way in favor of doing that on my couch than having to, you know, commute every day and, you know, spend a lot of time. I also have 2 degrees, so I've spent a lot of time in the classroom, and I didn't want to do that again either. So.
Yeah, also money too.
What about money? Oh,
no, that was a big factor too. I mean, the subscription program was just so much less.
It was cheaper too. Yeah, yeah.
You just want to try it.
So I was actually in the middle of an application to an in-person boot camp, and I was kind of just like, okay, I don't even want to get that anymore because I'd much rather do the online thing, and that's what happened.
Where did you end up spending most of your study time? Were you like at home or at a coffee shop?
Oh no, it was almost all in my apartment. I couldn't deal with the distractions, but you know, it was also convenient because I could do it at any given hour. I really liked the fact that, you know, I wasn't scheduled for a lecture at X time all the time. You know, it was like it was going to be a video, or, you know, the lesson would just be available.
Or I would be slacking you like in the middle of.
Or that, yeah. But I mean, it didn't matter if it was 8 a.m. or 10 p.m. You know, I could just do it then. So. Oh, and I also like the idea of your own pace, kind of. It wasn't like, oh, here's 12 weeks, you know, good luck. It was kind of like when you finish it, you know, that's when you finish it.
And how long did it take you to finish?
Well, it took me longer than it should have because I took a month off. I had a family situation I needed to take care of, so I was off for a month. But I was in the program from December to May, but I took March off. So.
7 months,
so you do the
6
math.
months?
You do that math.
5 months. That's not
so
long.
Yeah. Well, 4, I think, if you minus the whatever.
It's pretty impressive. That is faster than most, I will tell you.
Well, cool.
What about you, Savannah?
Hi, I'm Savannah. I am currently a software engineer at Fusio. I graduated Flatiron about 8 months ago now, so last fall, and I decided to get into coding because I jumped around a lot. I had a couple of career changes. I was in actually operations for a time, so I went from operations in jewelry and then into television, and I kept kind of looking for creative, analytical, problem solving, that kind of combination, and I felt like I was getting closer and closer, but I still wasn't quite there. So when I was in television, I was looking for, what can I do that will satisfy both sides of the coin, that will be problem solving and, that I'll hit all those check boxes. And that's when I found coding. And for me, I was full-time employed, so it made the most sense for me to just keep that job and do it online, and it allowed me to, like you were saying, work at my own pace. And yeah, it was awesome. I have no regrets.
How did you balance being full-time employed with doing the program? Honestly, it was just dedication. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. It became pretty addicting pretty quickly, for me at least. I know when I finished the intro course, I was just like, there has to be more. I can't be done here. So yeah, I really just, it turned into any free hour I had, I was coding. So I would get to work a couple hours early. So I'd be alone in an office, no distractions, and just hacking away at it. So your full-time job plus going to school online, what would you say a day? How long was a day?
Very long, but also not long enough. I would get up at the crack of dawn, and like I said, I would work for about 2 hours before the rest of my office came in, and then I would study on my lunch break, and then I'd usually post up at a coffee shop after work. So it was a lot of late nights, a lot of coffee shops.
Sarah, where did you mostly study? What were you doing while you were in the program?
Yeah, so I still had a full-time job. I was working in fundraising. And so I did a lot of work at coffee shops, like Savannah said. It was really easy for me to go there and kind of not worry about anything else. And then I also did a lot of stuff at home. And I live in not rural Iowa, but the middle of Iowa, so things aren't always like open all the time. So most of my nights were here.
Yeah. So I think for most students who do either our immersive or our full stack web developer program online, they've done a bunch of coding before. Like most students don't just kind of jump right into one of these programs. What was the point for each of you guys where you thought, okay, it makes sense to invest in this kind of more intense next step?
I'll shoot down now. So about a decade ago, actually, I was studying graphic design, and as part of that, we sort of had to learn HTML and CSS. Just to sort of, it wasn't the focus wasn't to become a web designer in terms of actually programming that stuff. It was just sort of like knowing what you could do so that you could design a layout for sort of someone else to do it. And I really enjoyed it, so I took a second course in that and learned just a drop of JavaScript. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was right around the same time that Rails was first coming out. And I actually remember one of my teachers being like, if you learned how to do this, it would be money in the bank, it'd be the best investment you could make, you'd work forever. And it was always kind of in the back of my head that, like, okay, coding might be an option. It just kind of like got pushed to the side, other opportunities, other things came along. But, like I said, when my wife mentioned it to me, I was like, you know what, it's not the worst idea in the world. And so, I just kind of dipped my foot in the water, and it was really just sort of appealed to, it kind of like we were saying, like it was creative and analytic at the same time, and it was kind of hard not to be addicted to that, So it kind of, the seed was planted a long time ago, but
and the more you did, the more
the more I wanted to do it, and I love coding even now. I love it. It's really fun.
That's good. It's a good sign.
I'm supposed to look at the camera, I think. Coding is fun.
What about you? Did you have kind of a moment where you were like, I want to do this?
So I think it was initially the intro program to the program.
Bootcamp prep.
Yeah, the bootcamp prep, which was all about creating a tic-tac-toe game, and I think that was it. I found myself. It was November. I was just about to enter exams in grad school, or exams, final papers, and I remember staying up until 5 in the morning, one day, it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday night, just trying to finish this one exercise. And I think it was that I realized this is something that I really love and care about and want to keep doing. And so if that was a moment, that's the one that I'd probably pinpoint.
Tic-tac-toe got me too. I don't think that was the moment when I was like, this is what I'm going to do forever. But when I caught myself like after hours, when I wasn't coding and thinking about like, I'm stuck here and how would I go about fixing this, or what did I do, what do I need to do in order to complete this? That's when, it started looking at it more seriously.
So, okay, so we're at this kind of juncture where you think, I could do this as a job, I could spend most of my time on this. I'm staying up until 5 in the morning, not clubbing, but trying to debug my tic-tac-toe. What research did you then do? Like, what were your steps to pick a program?
I mean, I just looked for everything available. I tried to get, look for courses where they offered introductory levels and, sort of to get a taste as to what the full-time commitment would be. Or not full-time commitment, but the actual, whatever I'm signing up for as more like accredited or whatnot. And yeah, I was just looking for something that would be a good fit in terms of the content and sort of how it was laid out. And I also wanted a community because like I said, I kind of knew from the beginning that I was going to be online, but I didn't want to be alone in that. So that was a huge draw for me.
For me, it was all about the jobs report. I was looking at outcomes. And so I really enjoyed it. Nobody else seemed to really enjoy the tic-tac-toe program, and nobody else that I was looking at really seemed to have a jobs report that I felt that I could trust. And so, I mean, not only did I have a friend who was working here at the time, who was the person who initially pushed me to do it, but it was exactly that I saw that there was a 99 or 98% graduation rate with a median salary of X, and then I figured if there is an option for me to learn how to code, this is probably the safest as far as getting me started on a career path.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think I already said, like, the jobs guarantee for me was huge. It's kind of like a what do you have to lose type of situation. And as I said, as far as picking, the minute I, kind of came to learn and realized that it could, well, I don't think it's called Learn anymore now, right? It's Flatiron Online, whatever. When I first discovered it, I was like, I can't believe I can do this online on my own. Like, I didn't even realize that was an option. So that was really, like I said, the clincher for me. So, and being able to actually sort of sample the curriculum and the way it was going to flow. That was the other thing about the other boot camps. It was kind of just like, this might stink. I might like show up on the third day and be like, I can't take it anymore. Whereas like I'd already sort of gotten a little taste of what this online program was going to be like through the tic-tac-toe thing. So yeah.
Sarah, what was your research process like? And actually, Savannah also mentioned community, and I know you were pretty active in the community when you were studying. So maybe talk a little about that too.
Yeah. So mine is a little bit of a different story, as I didn't have quite as many resources available to me as other people, as there are no boot camps that I know of in Iowa. So I was kind of prepared to move to Minneapolis, maybe make some bigger life changes. And then at about the time I was going to start to fill out that application was when I learned about Flatiron's online program. And so I was like, well, this actually seems like it might work a little bit better in my life, and I would still be able to have a job while doing it. So that was what I kind of jumped on right away. And then as I was thinking about it, I also saw the jobs report and was like, yes, this is definitely going to work out for me. So that was probably how I made that decision. The community was really good. I really enjoyed the Slack community. That was really helpful in kind of getting to talk with different people and see where they were at with different projects and things like that, and just reach out to people and ask questions. So that was really important, especially because, I mean, I don't know that many other developers outside of my job. So it was really helpful to like know that I'm not in this alone and that there are other people out here doing this.
What is it like to use the community features? I feel like we say community and like internally we know what that means. As a student, you know what that means. But if you're an applicant or for someone who's just getting started, can you paint a picture of kind of like what it's like to be in or use or lean on the community?
Both start talking.
No, go ahead. I really
so
don't.
So I use the ask a question feature a lot. I assume that's what we're talking about when we mean, okay, because I know that we were among the first to use a lot of the functionality. So hopefully this is what still exists.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the ask a
definitely
question feature was something that I used a lot in order to connect with other people who were also on the online program, and I found that to be tremendously helpful. Not just as somebody who was trying to get through an exercise, but I remember there was somebody, Nick Stevenson was a student here, and he and I ended up tag teaming people's questions after we had gotten past those exercises. So it felt like we knew each other, and the process of us being able to teach others reinforced our own teachings or our own learnings. And so I found that tremendously helpful. To be honest, I wasn't very involved elsewhere.
I'm sure
that's a pretty big deal that you're answering other students' questions after having learned the material yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
To us, that's community. We actually don't archive the answers to the questions. I'm sure you guys all stumbled upon this truth that in Ask a Question, you can't actually go back and see the past answers because we want you guys to do exactly what you and Nick ended up doing.
That's cool. And I remember what's funny, I came down to the campus one day, and who was sitting at one of the tables? Nick Stevenson. And so he and I hit it off. It was as if we had known each other for months and months and months, because I guess we did, but we had never spoken, we had never met in person, but I mean, it was amazing.
I mean, that happened to me sort of as the one asking the question. Like, I would get a sense of, oh, like, so-and-so is on, this will go really well. And, like, I would just recognize the experts who were on their shift at whatever time. And it got to the point, because I was asking so many questions, that I was like, hey, not that problem again, we're on to a new one. And I felt like I built up a rapport with them to the point where I was just really surprised one day when I recognized the person who was answering the question. It was like not even a month in, maybe. And I was like, oh, even though I am doing this solo and, doing it at my own pace, I'm still communicating with these people and forging these relationships. So that was really cool for me.
Yeah. So for the uninitiated who might be watching, you can ask a question real time on the platform while you're studying, and then the person who answers might be a technical coach who works at Flatiron School. Often those are recent grads of the program, and might be a fellow student. So whoever's online and knows the answer to your question will jump in and answer it, and that's the feature that everyone's kind of talking about. You can also, as Zach did, go back and answer people's questions after you've mastered that piece of content, which is a pretty cool way to reinforce what you are learning. You're going to say something?
No, I sort of had his experience in the sense that I did enjoy answering questions when I could, although I think I frustrated some people when I tried to answer a question I wasn't quite ready to answer, But I definitely think trying to explain something that you've already supposedly learned, you reinforce it, and then on top of that, you expose to yourself what you didn't learn, So it was definitely super helpful in that sense. I try to be active on Slack, a little more, but that's just not my game. I'm not great at that, and so I would read what was going on in Slack all the time, and I guess I enjoyed seeing when I would be beating myself up about how terrible I was at something, and seeing that a bunch of other people had struggled really hard with that particular thing as well was helpful. But
I actually love that point. Let's dwell on that for a minute. Can you guys talk a little bit about times when you felt dumb and what you do to move forward?
That's like a daily, that's like every day.
During the program or as software engineers?
Either. Let's start with during the program.
So I remember I was working on the Angular project, and it must have taken me a full month to figure out. I think I was just so frustrated with configuring how to connect the front and the back end, not knowing how to do it, or not really fully understanding how to do it. And so I remember asking friends of mine who were developers for help. I remember asking learn experts for help. I think there were many rewrites, and but it was a great learning process because every time I was facing a new challenge when I was trying to configure it. So I think as a result of some of those real pain points, stronger developer, I mean, we're all stronger developers for the challenges that we faced.
How do you get past getting stuck? Sarah, how often do you get stuck in the program or at work?
I get stuck all the time, like every day. I think Angular was for sure the one that got me stuck the most as well. And so with that, it really helped me to kind of, anytime I felt like I was really, really stuck, I would kind of write down the problem, break it down, figure it out that way, and then maybe like write a blog post about it or just some notes to like figure it out. And then that also gave me something to like look back on and be like, oh yeah, like I can totally figure this out, and like a week later I have it. Like it's not a big deal. But yeah, so that's how I work through things a lot.
Okay, going back, rereading material, self-teaching through blogging, I guess, so that's kind of like answering your own questions by forcing yourself to write stuff down, reaching out to humans on the platform. Anything else?
Well, I just think that's the business of doing this, is getting stuck. I mean, I work with some amazing developers who've done this for 15 years, who I am stunned at the stuff that they know and the stuff they can do. And I hear them every day go, oh, why isn't this working? And, or those moments where like, oh, and it's just, I don't think that's ever not going to be part of the situation. So I can't say one thing that I get stuck on, but I get stuck all the time.
Yeah,
Yes, for sure.
pretty common.
I mean, I think it's just the kind of thing too where you eventually learn. Like one of the most important things I learned was how to tell, when you just need to push a little bit more, when you need to take a walk, and when you need to ask for help, because you're going to get stuck, and it's going to happen, like you guys were saying, it's going to happen every single day. And there have been, I mean, during the program and also in my current job, like there have been so many examples where, one time I just had one more buckle down rereading through something on Stack Overflow where I was like, yes, that makes sense, and it was so gratifying. And then there are other times where you just hit a wall, and asking for help is just, it's a really great tool. Everyone's there to help you out. I've never met a malicious coder. Like everyone just wants you to do well, and you want to do well, and yeah.
Actually, I have one more thing that I'd like to just add to getting unstuck, which is, I think this doesn't really necessarily apply to when you're working on a lesson and you're supposed to grab a concept. But we briefly talked about this a couple of days ago, that like Avi, he's the dean of the school, used to say this thing, write the code you wish you had. I like to write the code. And like that meant nothing to me for a year, Like I was like, yeah, well, but you know how to code, so, I don't even know what I wish I had, But I've sort of recently realized that like, I can just, if I get stuck on something, I can just write anything. I just write, this is where the magic happens, and then skip that line and do the rest that I do know how to do. And then maybe, I'm writing something that's going to take 100 lines, and now I really only have one tiny little problem, And I've also experienced things where it's like, it turns out that thing that I was trying to reinvent already existed, and like, someone says, oh, you just, plug in this method right here and your problem is solved. And then instead of spending 4 hours, pulling whatever hair I have left out, which is none, I cannot believe that just came out of my mouth. Now I have most of the project done, and I would like to not answer any more questions.
No, but I think you guys both made a good point kind of in the process of answering that, which is at some point you struggle, and then at some point it makes sense to ask for help.
Sure.
How do you know when it makes sense to ask for help?
I don't know if there's a set sort of guideline for that. I mean, I know with myself, I can usually feel when I can be pretty stubborn with coding sometimes, where it's like, I want to figure this out, and I will do whatever it takes to figure this out. But I think you sort of, the more you program and the more you get used to, how long it takes you to do certain things, and you can kind of reach this point where it's like, it shouldn't be taking me, this long, or I know that I've exhausted all these options and I've kind of spent a lot of time digging deeper and deeper and deeper, and if it still isn't getting any clearer, if you're not, I'm not saying that you're going to find the answer right away when you're stuck and you're looking for answers, but if you're putting in a lot of effort and not really chipping away at it, I feel like that's when you get some kind of direction, whether it's someone who can show you really, like you're saying, like, oh, you just need to pop this line in there and you're good to go, or someone say, hey, have you looked at this? Have you tried doing this or thinking about it in this way? So it kind of comes with time,
Sarah, what do you think about that? You work in a dev shop with a lot of experienced craftsperson engineers.
Yes, and I actually pair program every day, like all day, every day. So during the program, I actually did not ask for help a lot, not near as much as I really needed to. But since working in a dev shop where we pair program, I've gotten really, really comfortable with being like, I have no idea where I'm going. I'm going to need some help on this one. And so I think really what it is for me is just kind of like talking through the problem with somebody. And then I think I'm really at the point where most people will kind of see where I'm kind of getting off, and I can articulate where I think the problem is and keep going. But I kind of credit that to like a lot of people around me who kind of can help guide me and coach me. So if I have any advice for anybody, it would be to pair program.
Did any of you pair program while you were in school, while you were doing this program? No. We have resources and features for that now.
No, and well, I think I'm sure it was offered to me, and I just kind of found reasons not to, and not for any particular reason other than maybe I thought, well, I want to learn this on my own. But I mean, you know, speaking from a job perspective, like I work with other developers all the time now, and I think that was tough at first. Just didn't know how to negotiate that, you know. And now it's I realize I wish I had done it more at the time.
Or even just to use version control, to use Git.
Right,
other
right.
developers,
Sure.
I had no idea how to do that.
Sure.
I knew how to do it on my own.
Yeah.
But the process of, I mean, branching and merging and
Right.
pull requests, and I mean, that was totally foreign to me because I'd never done pair programming.
How did you learn how to do that at work? I assume you learned how to do that at work.
Yeah, I had to learn how to do it at work. I work on a team of about 8, and I mean, it took a lot of time and frustration on their part and on mine to teach me how to do it. But yeah, I mean, it's just with time, just like anything else. You know, when you get your hands dirty and you really give it a good effort, then usually something comes out.
Hey, Zach, it sounds like there's a skill that you didn't have at all when you started work that you needed for work. What's that like? How did you get that job?
That's a really good question. Well, it's kind of funny, actually. One of the things that I said in one of my thank you letters to the person who interviewed me, and maybe this is something that wouldn't be recommended, but, but I said very candid. I mean, I was really honest about my limitation. You know, I said it was new, and in my thank you letter, I said what I lack in technical ability, I think I make up for in X, Y, and Z. And I think the X, Y, and Z was something like you know, determination and being a quick learner and somebody who is very eager and motivated. And so definitely recommended. And so, I mean, that's what I ended up saying. And what's nice about that too is I think the person who ended up hiring me, who was my boss's boss's boss, knew that because I felt like I had something to prove, that perhaps I would work even harder than the people who didn't. So I think it was a smart move on their part, and well, I don't know, but it ended up working. So, so there you go.
So let's talk a little bit about the career and job search part. What resources were available to you? What resources did you use from Career Services?
So I've partnered with a career coach. Shout out to Martha, she's great. And yeah, we would have like a Skype call multiple times a week because I'm very organized and I was like determined to check things off the list and, you know, get the job that I wanted. And it was great. You know, I feel like she really helped sort of guide me in the sense of, okay, you know, these are the things you should be doing to clean up your resume, and to, you know, these are the things you should be practicing, or, you know, have you blogged recently? Have you done, you know, just really ways to put me in a good position sort of to start off the job search and make myself more presentable to potential employers. And then as far as interviews go, she was, you know, read every single email and made sure that all, like, we did debriefs after every phone call, and it's like, okay, well, how did that go? And how do you, you know, what do you think you could have improved on? Or, you know, how did you think that, like, what were the skills that you presented in yourself, and do you think that it would be a good fit in all these things? And I think that really helped me sort of, it was just a really good resource to help guide me into where I am today. So I'm really grateful.
Talk a little bit about your coach experience.
My coach was awesome, Molly. I guess shout out to Molly. And she was great. I mean, she didn't as much need to keep me on task in terms of blogs and stuff like that. I kind of like figured out what the requirements were for the job guarantee, and also knowing that that was sort of like designed to help me get to the goal. And I was following those very rigorously. But Molly was kind of like a mini therapist for me, because I tend to get like really emotional at like let down, you know, if I didn't get the job I really wanted for this, or, you know, I would do this thing where I'd have an interview and I wouldn't really know how it went, and I'd start inventing like I knew exactly what that person was thinking about me and what can I do, and she'd just be like, look, you know, you're doing this, you're trying to think for them, and it's not, you know, she would bring me back to a place where I needed to be to like get to the next step, you know, which was really super, super helpful. I've never had that in any kind of job search situation, so that was great. In terms of like tools or recommendations, I would say blog, you know, blog your face off. Like, blogging will teach you things, and like my employer, no, it really will. I mean, you know, plan your project and then blog about the plan. Write the project, write about what you wrote. You know, my current employer told me that my blog got his attention, that I had written something about JavaScript closures, and he was like, okay, like his head is where I kind of needed to be, and so that was, you know, a good place to be. You know, the other thing I think that I did well was like, well, let me start with one of my weaknesses, which was I go into a coding challenge, and I was like, okay, I don't know about this, and I'd panic, and especially if someone was trying to watch me do it, it was like, forget it, I can't even type anymore, you know. But I remember saying after one of those things, I was like, look, you know, I know what you just asked me to do is simple and I couldn't do it, but I don't think it's a representation of the kind of code I write or how I understand programming. Let me send you a code sample, you know, and I just took the project that I had been working on for myself, and I sent him something I thought was interesting and a little blurb about what I was trying to do with it, and, you know, I ended up getting the job even though I had bombed the technical interview. So, you know, I guess I would just say, like, there's a lot of different ways to find your way into a job, you know. But like, do what you're being told by the career services people. Now, I know you love that, but it's the truth. Like, if I'm really glad that I did, and I didn't always necessarily want to, you know, but you know, it's like, oh, you know, apply, I don't remember what it was. Apply to 5 jobs a week or whatever it was, and I was like, yeah, but I haven't found 5 jobs I'm interested in actually doing this week. But I had to do it anyway, and, you know, like I said, eventually, little steps lead to something bigger, you know.
And you had a pretty roundabout, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but you had kind of a roundabout process with the company that ultimately ended up being your employer now, where you got the job.
What do you mean by roundabout?
You like built a project for them, and you wrote a blog post for them.
I did. Well, yes, that's. I wasn't necessarily building the project for them. It was the fact that their sphere of we do like dashboards and, you know, mostly front end. That's not really fair because we do some back end stuff too for financial firms. And so I started to try to like design this game that was based on, you know, a simulated stock market, you know, and it was kind of just like, well, I'm incorporating what they're doing and something that I'm interested in, and I'm learning how to code, and sort of like that was, and so that was actually the sample that I sent them. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was roundabout. It was a bit of a longer process than I expected it to be, but that was also the same interview that like I got along with my boss really well. Well, he wasn't my boss at the time, but like I said, he sat me down and he's like, oh, well, we're going to do this JavaScript exercise. And I was like, you know, I was like, can we not, you know, so, but yeah, so anyway, career services team, blog your face off. Those are my 2 main points.
Sarah, what were the most valuable things that you did or resources that you had access to during the job search?
Yeah, I would say that was probably my career coach, Mimi. She was really great. So my job search happened really fast and before I was like done with the program. So it was a little strange. But most of my time with my career coach was spent talking through how I would answer questions. So we did a lot of like, tell me about yourself and things like that, which is really helpful for me. The more like I say something, the more like personable and articulate I can be. So we definitely did that at least 5 times. So that was really great. And then I also only really interviewed at one place. And so then we had a lot of debriefs about that and about whether or not I wanted it and just different things like that. And it ended up being a great fit, and all of my like career coaching experience and everything was really great.
Zach, maybe, what, this is kind of a big question maybe, so anyone can answer, but what surprised you most about the whole process, from like starting to doing the program to getting a job to now working?
I didn't think I'd love it as much as I do. I can't came from a sales background, so I know that every time I talk to any one of my friends about what I'm doing now, particularly those who I haven't seen in a while, they'll say, how is it that you're a software engineer? So I didn't think that I'd be as hooked as I am. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, there's nothing in the world that I'd rather be doing than what I'm doing right now. So I don't know if that answers your questions in the way that you maybe wanted it to be answered, but that's
there's no right answer or wrong answer to that.
There you go.
Or is there anything about your sales background that you think helped along the way?
Yeah, I think it was the ability to talk with other people was probably have meaningful conversations and connect with other people was what differentiated me from a lot of the people who were perhaps applying to work at BlackRock or elsewhere. So I think that was the major difference. Exactly.
Anyone else surprises through the process or things you learned?
I mean, I think you're always learning what you don't know. Like, that was the most interesting to me, is having a better grasp on, you know when you're starting your coding job that you're, a junior developer and, you're fresh out of boot camp or you're fresh out of online school or you're fresh out of this a lot of the more senior people have these years of experience, and, it's kind of this like big bad world out there of all the languages that you have not learned and all of the frameworks that you've not played around with, and I just think that I've gotten more used to, or sort of being able to identify like, I should go and look more into querying languages because I touched on it and I learned, but I was more of a front end person. Like, that's just what really clicked for me, and just having a better understanding of what you don't know. I think that's what I was really surprised about.
And just to piggyback on that, not just what you don't know, but also that you were able to learn it. And so it's funny, the job, working at BlackRock right now, there isn't a language in which I'm coding right now that I learned at Flatiron. So I work in TypeScript and I work in Java.
Right.
Yeah.
And the process of jumping into those languages was, a couple of weeks or 3 weeks maybe, and then, I'm by no means a pro, in Java. But yeah, I mean,
well, technically you are.
I guess. But very much feeling comfortable with, and that if any of us wanted to learn any other language, knowing that it's available to us, that we can do it in a short period of time because we already have the foundational ability and skills or knowledge. That was also pretty shocking.
Yeah, actually, that sort of makes me realize what I was surprised about is not necessarily just that I can learn this next language. I also don't work in languages that we learned here, but that you can change your life this fast. And that's not to say that everybody should get into a boot. I don't think that at all. I don't think that everybody should be a coder. But if you decide this is what you want and you really like it, it's been 18 months since I joined Flatiron, and my life is entirely different. And it's like, what? Like, really? Like, it's pretty crazy that happened that fast,
Okay, last question, and I will pose this to everyone around the circle. Sarah, let's start with you. One thing that you would tell your prospective student self that you wish you knew that you now know. Advice for yourself before you started Flatiron School.
Wow. I think I'm going to go back to figuring out how to be involved in the community that works best for you. And with that, I would largely emphasize pair programming and looking at tests. So look at your test suite, figure those out, and pair program. Do those two things. Yeah.
So I'd say don't rush it. Initially, when I started, I had a goal of finishing it in 3 months. And then I think I was, in the very beginning, I was on pace to finish it in a month and a half or maybe 2 months, and then I burned out. And so it took me a lot longer. As a result, I think it took me 7 or 8 months in the end. But as a result of having rushed, I didn't fully grasp some of the core concepts that I needed later on that turned out to be very major concepts. And so those are things that even to this day I find myself kicking myself just because I wish that I had known them. I wish that I had just slowed down a little bit. So.
Be part of the community. Read your tests. Good tip. Slow down. What about you?
I just wish I had maybe approached it in a calmer way, which is hard for me anyway. I'm just like this. That's just, but I think that like I was worried about getting a job before I'd even graduated, and like I was worried about learning Rails before I even knew Ruby, and like I'd get stuck on a SQL lesson, and I start getting angry at myself, and then I'd be angry at the world, and then I'd be angry at Avi for not being right next to me to answer the question that I had, and I just think that maybe I would have. I don't know, just had a more pleasant experience. And also, I'm guessing that I probably would have learned it a little better if my sort of emotional self wasn't standing in the way. But then again, but that said, you're going to have to face that too. It's never going to be easy every single day, But I think that if I could go back, I would be like, listen, it's going to be fine in 18 months. So maybe you should keep that in mind now,
Okay, calm down, be aware of your emotions.
Yeah, just don't, there's no need to panic, there's no need to be angry when you don't get it, it's a process,
It's a process.
That's right, yes. And what time is it?
That was great.
Thank you.
Advice for your free Flatiron self, and then we'll take questions.
I would say don't be scared. I know the very first lesson when they say to try out the ask a question button, just say hello and greet everyone. I looked at it, I was like, we're gonna hold off on that for a lesson or two. And that just applied to everything. Once you do it, everyone is so nice. And then even when it comes to making a mistake, a lot of the times when I got really stuck, the easiest way to get unstuck is to understand exactly what's going wrong. So, if you just allow yourself to say, I'm going to play around with this, this is not going to work, but we're going to see what the result is and see where that takes us, and having that sort of fearlessness and just kind of, we're going to go with it, that made me such a better programmer in the end than back when I was like, not going to try this yet, not sure if that's correct, we're going to, reread it and So don't be scared, is my advice.
Similar to don't panic.
Oh, yeah, definitely coming from the same place, yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for this discussion. I think we're going to transition to take a few questions from the folks who are watching.
Definitely. We've got a lot of really good questions. Oh, wow, they're really coming in now. Okay.
Too fast for Emily to read.
Too fast, guys. No, just kidding. Send more. All right, so one question that we've gotten a couple of times is that in their experience, they haven't seen a ton of entry-level positions out there on the market, and they're worried that they're getting shipped overseas. So one, did you feel like you had to differentiate yourself from true newbies? How did you find the entry-level positions to apply for?
And I'll add a corollary question to that. Is your position a position you were qualified for coming out of Flatiron School? Like, if you read the job description, would you have been qualified for that position?
No, they were looking for a Java developer, and I didn't know anything about Java. So there was no way in which I was qualified for this, but I was able to show that there were other things that made me a great candidate, which was that I knew how to program in a language, and that I was really eager to learn. And so, yeah, if there was something that I'd say about that, don't limit yourself to just entry positions. Apply for it all. You may as well. Whatever lands. And so give them a shot to make a decision on you. Don't cut yourself out. So.
Anyone else?
That was exactly my experience. I didn't see any entry-level stuff, very, very little. But that said, like sometimes I did interview with for higher positions that maybe I was qualified for, and I would get a challenge, and like I was like, oh, I know 50% of this. Like I'm already halfway to this job that yesterday I didn't think I was qualified to even like interview for. So, but you are going to see that, and because companies are sort of protecting themselves, they would, but yeah, great, yeah, we all want the best person we could possibly get, but like it's one of the great things about this this business is that like there's a major demand for developers. So it's like there's more jobs than there are developers that are qualified to take those jobs, and you're gonna you have a chance to get one of those even if the company isn't looking for you now. So yeah, it's discouraging, there's no doubt about it, but it's not prohibitive, let's say.
remember being very overwhelmed with the job search because it was like one after the other that I felt like I can't possibly do this. How would I show up on day one when I don't meet any of these qualifications? But it ended up working out, and you'll surprise yourself with what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll surprise yourself with how quickly you can pick things up and how quickly you can teach yourself. And then as far as like distinguishing yourself goes, I mean, I think that that's kind of with any job, though. You know, I think you're always going to want to find, or at least in my opinion, you're going to want to find the job and the team that suits who you are as a person and not just, you know, a generic coder, you know. So yeah, you should distinguish yourself, but not in any. What I mean to say is that should be sort of natural. You know, you should be like, this is who I am, and this is the kind of person I am, and this is the kind of team that I want to work with. This is the atmosphere that works for me. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't, and that's going to end up with a more harmonious fit, I think.
Sarah, you had I'm just going to dwell on this question for one more minute. You had a little bit of a different experience.
Yeah. So I actually got my foot in the door through a meetup. I saw like a meetup posted on Twitter, so I went that night, and I ended up starting to talk to some of their talent people, and they didn't even like have a job posted for me. They were just like, yeah, send us your stuff and we'll see what we can do. And I ended up getting hired out of that. So really you go for everything and anything. You talk to people, it's what you do.
And then what was the position that they ended up creating?
Yeah, so I did an apprenticeship. So we write software for a bunch of different clients. So for like the first few months, I was on a team. I was not billable for this client, but I basically was a member of that team. I wrote software there. And then after that, I'm now like a billable developer on every team that I'm on. I don't work in any of the languages that we learned in Flatiron School, and so I'm right there with everyone else.
Awesome. Great answers, everybody. Okay, what should I pick next? So, have any of you, before you started at Flatiron School, did you poke around with Coursera, Treehouse, Codecademy? And if so, how were those different from your experience at Flatiron School?
The first thing I played around with was the Codecademy HTML and CSS, and I really enjoyed it. I made my way through it pretty quickly, but I liked sort of the roadmap of the Flatiron School, so you could kind of see not only, okay, this is the skeleton of the coursework that you're going to be learning, but this is exactly, you know, where you're going to be and why you're going to be there and how we're building this up, which I didn't feel like I really had that same sense there. So that's what helped me make the decision.
I did a little bit with Codecademy, and I think I maybe took like one Treehouse class or something like that. I didn't think that either of them were as in-depth as Flatiron School's, and when you do the Flatiron School's curriculum, you work with like real-world tools. So you're going to work with the command line, you're going to work in a real text editor, which you don't necessarily get all the time with like a Codecademy. So those are really useful things too.
Awesome. If you guys had to choose one thing that was the most valuable that you did during your job search, what would that be?
I built an app because I didn't entirely realize when I was doing all of the assignments through Learn. I did them and I did the ones that were interesting to me, but like I didn't add any CSS styling. I basically did what was required of me, and then, you know, whatever during the assessments they said, oh, why don't you try adding a link here? And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so at the end of it, I had these 5 projects that I was really proud of, because I was like, you know, I built these, I built them myself, but they were all black and white, like. So in order to, you know, just have something that I could completely call my own, that was exactly the direction I wanted to take it, that was, you know, well thought out and planned and prepped. I built my own app, and that really, I feel like, helps me at least even if it didn't make a difference to, whoever was looking through my portfolio, it gave me a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I would basically echo that. The first thing I did is, build my own portfolio app / site in Rails and put it up. And, every time I got a code challenge, I would, if I didn't do very good, I'd build my own little mini app based on whatever it is that the core concept was there. But that's it. I mean, coders code, so that's what you should be doing is coding things, and you should be blogging about it so that you're not just coding in a box, But like, yeah, I would say build things, put them out there, blog. I mean, some employers are just going to be like, I just want to know that you want to be doing this, like you're going to be doing this for 8 hours a day at this desk, and if you're not doing it on your own, then why do I believe you're going to do it for me,
I had the same experience. So it was really just about building something. I had a goal of every week I would build something new. So my brother just got married this past weekend. I built his wedding website. And so, I mean, that was one thing, building a portfolio website, building something related to voting, and so, yeah, don't stop building. And particularly things that look good. I had the same experience of not realizing that, shoot, maybe my project should have some
pizzazz.
Yeah.
I would counter that though. I wouldn't worry so much about it being polished. The only reason why I mean that is because like making mistakes and having it not be perfect is important too, right? Like, and for me, if I approached it that way, I would get obsessed with it being perfect, and then I would never get anything. I would never get anything done, So like I was coding a game the other day just for the heck of it, and like it was terrible, and I realized that I had approached it wrong, and that I hadn't separated my concerns, and like all of a sudden all the lessons that I had learned started coming back to me. I was like, oh, here's why you do that stuff, because if you don't, you're in trouble.
Right.
So yeah,
it's a fair point.
Just do it. That's what I say.
Just build stuff.
Yeah,
maybe it should be pretty, maybe it should not be pretty.
No, it should be pretty. I'm just saying,
It doesn't need to be perfect.
Exactly.
What else?
All right. So next question. We get this question a lot. Did any of you have a background in math or science, and do you think that is necessary to be a good coder developer?
I was a classics major, so no.
I was in the arts primarily at first, and so no math whatsoever. Didn't even take calc, and haven't taken math since junior year in high school. That said, I think that you need some aptitude towards analytical thinking, but
that doesn't have to mean math, though.
Yeah, no. Yeah, correct.
I was the same. I hadn't taken math since the 10th, or any science since the 10th grade. But I studied languages in college, so I'm sure that had something to do with, but no math or science here. So.
Sarah nodding no also.
Nope. I did marketing and writing, so no math or science.
Is there a skill in the things that you guys did study and do professionally before that you feel like is transferable? I mean, I've heard musicians say playing. Oh, you play music, right?
I do, but that's not what I was thinking. As transferable. And I'm a terrible musician. Whatever.
What were you thinking?
No, I was thinking, well, I was, like I said, I was a law firm manager, and I think that my main transferable skills, is these interpersonal skills. I think Zach touched on this a little bit earlier. Like, yes, of course, my primary goal is to sit at my computer and code, but, you're going to be talking to people, and you're going to be exchanging emails, and you're going to have meetings, and, I'm actually shocked sometimes in these meetings how bad some people are just communicating with humans, and so, yeah, so no, definitely.
Makes you shine.
I wasn't going to say that, but it's just, it's definitely, I feel comfortable in those situations, and it has nothing to do with coding. I just know that if someone asks me a question, I'm not going to be scared to answer it,
I mean, I think for me, it's kind of one of those like connect the dots backwards things, so like I said, I was a classics major, so it's translations, and you're finding sort of, what pronoun goes with what noun, or what matches together to make the sentence make sense. And now I look at coding where I'm like, okay, well, you have to close your loops, and if you're working with old school JavaScript, you have to have your semicolons, and you have to make sure if you're using templates, have your end before and end blocks, and everything kind of matches together in that way. And so I found that interesting, because I never would have thought that I would use any skill from my my time in college, but you'd be very surprised at sort of what you can call upon that will really help you out.
Can one of you sort of explain what the interview process looks like for developer positions?
Well, it really depends.
Just an example.
Yeah, I did a couple interviews and they were all completely different. So I could probably speak to, I mean, at least 3 of the large use case scenarios. But, you know, some companies are really looking for, you know, you'll usually start with like a phone screen that's just a personality fit, and are your goals kind of aligned with where the company is going. So, you know, I really wanted to write JavaScript, and I had a call with a company who really worked in Ruby, and it's like, well, this is not going to go anywhere if you don't really want to work with Ruby. And typically after, you know, however many phone calls, the technical interview is what really made me nervous. And that, it really, again, it depends on the employer, and it depends on the kind of environment, and it depends on the position. One of my technical interviews I was told would be in Angular, and it ended up being in C. So that was an experience, and I just had to say, well, I don't know anything about this, but we'll go for it and see what happens. And others were more conceptual, so like if I were to build, you know, a fake Instagram, how would I go about that? What kind of models would you need in your database, and how would you query for those models? And, you know, none of it was actually, I didn't write a line of code in that technical interview, but it was all sort of speaking through the big ideas of what we would potentially be building and how you think and how you process and handle feedback. That was my experience, at least.
Anyone else?
So I had the initial like phone interview, all of that jazz, but then I had everybody who works at Pillar does a kata before they do their technical interview. So you kind of go into that with the other person kind of knowing where your abilities are. So basically, I wrote out a program of like how you would calculate a babysitter's night of pay based on all of these different rules, and that, which I recently learned, is kind of what set me apart and what made like people remember me. So if you ever get like a coding exercise before your interview, make sure to do it right and do it well, because that'll be really big. And then I just had a pairing interview after that where I wrote code with somebody.
Cool. So last question, we have a couple of minutes left. Have any of you ever experienced imposter syndrome, and how did it affect your job search?
I don't know if everyone in the world knows what imposter syndrome is, but well, why doesn't someone else define it and then tell us how you felt it in your career so far?
Oh, I just think it goes back to what we said about, like, you know, getting frustrated and coming up against blocks that, you know, things that you think, well, I just can't do this, and how it happens every day, and how that's just the normal state of a programmer. And I think that's, I think that I can't define. It's the feeling that you're not really a programmer, that you're faking it, and everybody else knows something that you don't know. And you know, people do know things that you don't know, and you know things that they don't know, and that's sort of what this, you know, business is about. Yeah, I mean, I'm experiencing imposter syndrome right now. You know,
you are totally a graduate of Flatiron School job just talking about it.
So yeah, I think that's it. You're gonna experience that. You know, nobody knows everything. That's the thing, is you feel like you're supposed to know everything, and it's just not possible. So.
I had a friend who had done a similar boot camp, and she kind of warned me, like, you're going to feel some imposter syndrome, and this is how you're going to feel, and it's okay, and everyone knows something that you don't know, and you might know something that they don't know, and it's a shared thing. And so I went into it thinking, like, I know what imposter syndrome is. I'm going to beat it. Like, my entire first month, and like, I couldn't quite put 2 and 2 together, so my entire first month, we were still actively hiring another developer, and I didn't realize, but every time HR would come over to talk to my CTO about this other hire, I was like, this is it. They're firing me because I am not a developer. I didn't realize that, oh no, that was just imposter syndrome. You're fine.
I remember having a conversation with friends of mine who right before I was starting, and I had a dream, and the dream was I was sitting at my desk, and then all of a sudden everybody in the office stood up and pointed at me and shouted imposter. So I guess when I started, I was pretty open and vocal actually about the dream. I said, I really can't believe you hired me, which maybe isn't advised, but I was vocal about, you know, my limitations and about how this is what I was feeling, and but that I'm very dedicated to learning more, and what are the tools that I can use or resources that I can glean in order to get to a place where I could contribute, be a contributing member of the team. And I think that has led to my not getting fired in the 4 months that I've been working at BlackRock. So,
Has anyone been fired in their first few months working at their job? No. Has anyone thought that they would be fired? We know that you have.
Yep.
We know that you have. Yeah. So everyone's got it.
I don't think I thought that I was going to be fired, but I think I definitely thought I should have been fired at one or 2 points. I was like, I'm just not cutting it right now. You know?
So yes, the answer is yes. Everyone has a little bit of imposter syndrome.
Even if you think that you're better than it, like it'll find you.
Are we out of time?
We
Or
are. It's 8:02.
8:02. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with us
Yeah, thank you for having
tonight.
us.
Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us online. Yeah, I guess what's the next thing that I say?
You can join an online info session if you want to learn more, or you can email admissions@flatironschool.com with any other questions.
There you go. All right. Have a good night, everyone.